Hello viewers and welcome back to my blimp. We've flown through the balloon age, the glider age, the airship age, and now we enter the age of adventurers, record breakers and media sensations. This is the third leg of our 200-year journey through the history of British women in the air, and today we enter the dizzying interwar era. Aviation had taken a great leap forward during the First World War. People could fly further and faster than ever before. In 1919, Alcock and Brown became the first to fly non-stop across the Atlantic, from Newfoundland to Ireland. Who would be the first to fly solo? Or from New York to Paris? Who would be the first woman to do it? The transatlantic race was on, and everyone was eager to become the next big record breaker. Anyone who broke a major record was splashed across newspapers and film reels. Lasting fame was to be had for those with the courage and skill to fly long distances in dangerous conditions. In 1927, the English Princess Anne of Loewenstein-Wertheim-Freudenberg went missing over the Atlantic when, as a passenger, she was part of an attempt to fly from England to Canada. She gained the morbid honour of becoming the first woman to die in a transatlantic flight. The following year, Elsie Mackay, incidentally the first British female jockey, disappeared whilst attempting to fly from England to the US. This was dangerous stuff! It was. In May 1927, Charles Lindbergh became the first to fly non-stop across the Atlantic from New York to Paris. Just 2 weeks earlier, French First World War aces Charles Nungesser and Francois Colli went missing whilst attempting the same flight. The following year, Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. A lot of people don't realise that all these famous flights, Alcock and Brown, Lindbergh, Earhart, were all eastbound from North America to Europe. The westbound route, from Europe to North America, was much more challenging. The names Huenfeld, Cole and Fitzmaurice have been largely forgotten, but in 1928 they made the first westbound transatlantic flight from Ireland to Canada. It was not until 1932 that Jim Mollison, husband of Amy Johnson, we'll get to her later, became the first to fly the route solo. These westbound flights were far harder than the eastbound ones, but receive less attention because they happened later. Allow me a moment to explain the science, please. In the mid-latitudes, the winds across the Atlantic prevail westerly. The higher you go, the stronger they blow. This makes a noticeable difference even to today's jets, but a huge difference when you're flying at pre-war airspeeds. Say your speed through the air is 150 miles per hour. And let's say the wind is 30. Flying west to east, the air you're flying through is going the same way as you. But what when the block of air is moving against you? 30 miles per hour of wind on the nose slows your airspeed of 150 down to 120, actually passing over the ocean. Put another way, from Western Ireland to Newfoundland is about 2,000 miles over the ocean. But with a 30 mile per hour tailwind, you only have to do 1,667 miles through the air. With a 30 mile per hour as a headwind, though, you have to go 2,500 miles through the air. Thank you, Captain. In 1936, the British Beryl Markham decided to have a go. Beryl was born in England, but moved to Kenya as a 4-year-old. She worked as a bush pilot, spotting animals from the air and relaying them to safaris on the ground. In 1928, she is said to have had an affair with both Prince Edward, later King Edward VIII, and his younger brother. That obviously has nothing to do with flying, but does demonstrate her adventurous spirit. Beryl set off for her westbound transatlantic flight in 1936. She intended to fly to New York, but the route was so challenging that the vents of her fuel tanks froze over and she was forced to land in Nova Scotia. Despite being the first woman to complete this westbound transatlantic crossing, Beryl was largely forgotten until the 1980s, when her memoir was rediscovered. Next up is the turbulent relationship between two pioneering female pilots called Mary. Mary Heath was Irish and had a difficult childhood. She became Lady Mary Heath when, aged 31, she married the 75-year-old Sir James Heath. She was only the 9th woman in Britain to be awarded a pilot's licence and had a spirit for competition. In 1927, she won a ladies' air race in which her rival Mary Bailey came 3rd out of 3. Mary Bailey was 6 years older and born in Northern Ireland to an aristocratic family. She became the 12th woman to receive a pilot's licence in Britain. Both Marys learned to fly at Stag Lane Aerodrome in London. In May 1927, Heath asked Bailey to accompany her to set a height record of 16,000 feet. 2 months later, Bailey set her own record of 17,000 feet. Bailey went a step further and became the first woman to fly across the Irish Sea. She was awarded the inaugural Harmon Trophy for Aviatrix of the Year. The male award that year was given to Charles Lindbergh. In January 1928, Mary Heath decided to really impress everyone by becoming the first woman to fly solo from Cape Town to London. Unfortunately, Mary Bailey, at the same time, decided to fly from London to Cape Town. Heath set off for England in February. Bailey set off for South Africa in March. They met halfway in Khartoum, Sudan. Heath, the first woman to fly over the equator, arrived first. When Bailey arrived, Heath allegedly commented that she looked tired, but it was gallant of her to attempt such a flight when she had never flown out of England before.
Typical women's bitchiness! Men don't do that sort of thing. Male pilots absolutely do not have massive egos and a desperate need to assert their superiority over their rivals.
Bailey reached South Africa at the end of April, whilst Heath reached England in May. Both had achieved their respective records of being the first women to complete the flight in their specific direction. Not to be outdone, Bailey decided to fly back via the west coast of Africa, and by the time she arrived in London in January 1929, had flown 16,000 miles. The homeward leg was the longest flight by a woman up to that point and won her the 1929 Britannia Trophy. Heath, meanwhile, volunteered as a pilot for Dutch airline KLM and could have become the first female commercial pilot, but they decided not to hire her. It was Winifred Drinkwater, a Scottish woman, who in 1933 became the first woman in the world to hold a commercial pilot's licence.
Yes, well, it would be a number of decades before women would be trusted with proper commercial flights.
Sadly, an accident in August 1929 put an end to Heath's flying career. She struggled with alcoholism and died falling down the stairs of a tram in 1934, aged 42. It's a tragic end to a woman who overcame immense difficulties to become a pioneering Irish pilot. Mary Bailey retired from flying in 1934 after a forced landing in the Sahara and died naturally in 1960, aged 69. Although flying was still very dangerous, there had been crucial advances in pilot safety. A key one was parachutes, and in 1919, Sylvia Boyden became the first British woman to jump from an aeroplane with a parachute. The novelty of female parachutists was still enough to draw attention, and it was hoped that her successful demonstration of the British Guardian Angel parachute would draw interest from investors. It was not until 1925 that the Royal Air Force officially adopted parachutes. Although they opted for the superior American Irving design, the precursor to modern parachutes, Sylvia Boyden helped demonstrate the effectiveness of parachutes. Another major development was
airships! My favourite part. Remember, we have already covered the tumultuous history of British airships in another video, so you'd better jolly well watch it. In the meantime, the important thing to remember is that everything had to get bigger!
the massive 776-foot-long German airship Graf Zeppelin made the first transatlantic passenger flight in 1928. The following year, it set off for an epic round-the-world trip covering 20,500 miles in 3 weeks, the fastest circumnavigation of the globe. There were only 20 passengers aboard, and one of them was British journalist Grace Drummond Hay, who became the first woman to circumnavigate the world by air. Grace Drummond Hay was a passenger, but the first woman to attempt to fly herself around the world was Mildred Mary Bruce in 1930. This was a partial circumnavigation because she crossed the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans by boat, but she did fly 19,000 miles the rest of the way round the world and had only been flying for 4 months. It wasn't until 1964 that Jerry Mock became the first woman to properly fly around the world. Mary Bruce's first flying lesson was the day after Amy Johnson became the first woman to fly solo from England to Australia in 1930. I made a video about Amy Johnson a few years ago which covers her story in more detail, so do watch if interested. In 1934, Joan Meakin became the first woman to glide across the English Channel. A few months later, she broke the world gliding loop record by doing 18 loop-the-loops in a row.
That would make you really dizzy. When it comes to flying, I prefer to stay level-headed, preferably in a luxurious cabin.
Stag Lane Aerodrome in London was the meeting place for a lot of female flyers. Pauline Gower and Dorothy Spicer met there and became friends, setting up a small air taxi service in 1931, one of the first commercial passenger services operated by women. Spicer was only the second British woman to qualify as a ground engineer, after Amy Johnson, and the first in the world to qualify as an advanced engineer. In 1938, she joined the Air Registration Board, later the Civil Aviation Authority, the first woman to hold any such position. As war drew closer, it became clear that many women wanted to become involved in war work. Women were forbidden from joining the Royal Air Force, so Pauline Gower campaigned for the creation of the Air Transport Auxiliary. This allowed women to contribute to the war effort by transporting aircraft between factories and airfields.
Jolly good of them, I say!
Established in December 1938, with 8 women among its pilots, by the end of the war it had grown to employ 166 female pilots from across the Allied nations. 15 of them, including Amy Johnson, lost their lives during the war. Pauline Gower was awarded the MBE in 1942 and died in 1947. Dorothy Spicer died in a commercial flight crash in 1946.
I must say, you've done it again. I simply had no idea that there were so many important British flying women. Whatever next? Women in space?
It's funny you should say that, Captain. You'll have to wait for the next video.
And where can I find out more about these lovely flying women?
The main source for this video is Sally Smith's Magnificent Women and Flying Machines, which covers these stories in a lot more detail. I'll see you in the next video.
The gypsy moth takes flight, going to Australia. There's a record to break if you manage to get it right.